This is the Marketing Podcast Network.
Welcome to Uncorking a Story, the podcast that introduces you to the rich world of storytellers who share their personal journeys, creative processes, and the stories behind their stories, one conversation at a time. I'm your host, Mike Carlin, and I'm thrilled to be part of your writing journey. If you're an aspiring writer, a literary enthusiast, or simply someone who believes in the transformative power of words, you've come to the right place. Every week, we'll pop the cork on the world of successful storytellers and give you a healthy pour of inspiration, insight, and empowerment. My mission is to help writers like you realize your full potential through the transformative and therapeutic power of writing. Whether you're just starting your literary voyage or looking to refine your craft, I'm here to provide you with the knowledge, inspiration, and encouragement you need to embark on your own storytelling adventure. So, are you ready to uncork your story and let your creativity flow? Uncorking a Story is about to begin. Sit back, relax, and let the transformative magic of storytelling whisk you away. Welcome to Uncorking a Story. Today, I'm pleased to welcome back Ashleigh Renard to Uncorking a Story for a third time. I guess a third time's a charm. Through her candid presence on social media, Ashleigh has built a committed following who tune in daily for her fresh, no-fuss advice on everything from keeping monogamy hot, to renegotiating a marriage, to getting kids to clean the house, because nothing makes her prouder than child labor. With savvy and plenty of humor, her down-to-earth voice tackles topics that are relatable to anybody struggling with the awkwardness of living in a meat suit at Earth School. Boy, do I love those terms. She joins me today to talk about her new memoir, Split, a memoir in pieces. Welcome back to Uncorking a Story, Ashleigh.
Mike, thank you for having me back.
Ashleigh, I'm happy to have you back, and I'm curious, when we were talking, before I hit the old record button, you mentioned something about your throat chakra, and I'm curious if you could expand on that. What does that mean, throat chakra?
Okay, that's funny, Mike, that we're starting there. All right, so everybody, hi. So when Mike and I were talking, when we were trying to get the Zoom audio working, I had what you would call a frog in your throat, okay? So here we're getting right into like old wives' tales and the intersection with Eastern medicine and like what's real, what's not, right, Mike?
Yep.
Because we get that experience sometimes where like we try to speak and we can't. We have to like clear our throat, right? So what my therapist says, Jackie, if you guys have read Swing, this is a therapist I've been with for 9 years now. We just celebrated our 9-year anniversary at the beginning of November. She's seen me through a lot of things, a lot of changes. But what she says when there's a frog in my throat is that means that you're speaking the truth because it is rattling your throat chakra. Okay. So, there are a lot of things that happen. Like, a lot of us, when something surprises us, we'll touch our forehead. Well, if we learn from acupressure or acupuncture, these are actually the calming points on the body that an acupuncturist would use. We have all of these like different things that we do. And is it in our heads or is it in our physiology, Mike? That there are certain things that we know we can do to help calm ourselves. And is our body telling us things that maybe we don't understand with the little hiccups that we have. So that's what I was saying. I must be getting ready to really speak the truth on this podcast episode 3, Uncorking the Story with Ashleigh.
I love starting off with chakras. I started seeing a energy healer, Reiki professional earlier this year. At a friend of mine, Becky, I was having coffee with her and she's like, hey, I just met this woman, Lisa. I'll give Lisa a plug, Lisa Labozo. And she's like, I think you should really see her. It'll help you out a lot. And so I go see her. And the first thing she says after our session, she's like, your heart chakra is jacked up. I mean, and she probably didn't say jacked up, but that's what I remember hearing. And she's like, what's going on in your life? And I'm like, wow, there was definitely something to that if they could feel it, because there was a lot going on during that period of time in my life.
And you can feel it. They say that animals can smell fear. I think that especially as kids, we can smell bullshit, right? We know when grownups are telling us the truth or not. The conclusion that we jump to isn't always accurate as kids, but we know when something's up. Do you know what I mean? So I go back and forth with what I believe, Mike, all the time. Like I practice witchy stuff and natural stuff and being in tune with Mother Earth more than anyone else who barely believes in it. Because like I don't know if I can believe in it, but I know when I practice certain things and when I relate to myself and hook up with other people who are like the same sort of vibe, like, okay, listen when your throat gets a little rattly. Don't just think it's nothing. What if it's everything that you need to know right now, right? Like we all, whether we think like, okay, humans, the stat that always went around when we were kids, Mike, was humans only use 10% of their brains, right? Do you remember hearing that?
No, I remember that. And I would argue that most use less than 5.
Well, okay. And I don't know when you actually look at the neuroscience, how much is lighten up and how much is like dark. I don't know. But what I do know is, okay, and then on the other side of it, right? So that's neuroscience. And then Buddhism says karmically in every finger snap, that period of time, okay? There are 60 karmic events in every finger snap that you have set up and planted seeds for karmically that are now coming to fruition. And what I take from that is presence is important. And there are things clicking into place or things happening all around me all the time that I'm not noticing. Okay. Good, bad, indifferent. Most of us are really running a story in our heads at most times and not really noticing the changes in our outer environment. Right. So practitioners who can help me tune into my energy and like be guided by my body instead of my brain all the time, right? Because you and I, we both have good brains, Mike. We're both writers. We're both business people. You know what I mean? Our brains are very busy. But what can we open up to health-wise, creativity-wise, if we turn down the volume on the brain a little, right? And we go more into how things feel.
Well, I mean, also, I think we need to be better at not distracting our brains all the time when we do have downtime, because how many times do I just see people walking in nature, listening to headphones, versus kind of being in the moment and taking where they are.
How many times do I every day go on Instagram and look at the same stupid political memes? Instead of today, I have a red-tailed hawk and a horned owl out here. And, I don't hear those every day, right?
Yeah.
So we see other people doing it and we're guilty of it too, right? Just like wanting to consume. I always look at like, what is our ratio of consuming to creating, And as a creator, I know when I am like taking in from the world everything it has to offer, I feel exhausted, right? Whereas if I block some of that out, sometimes, and then go into my creativity, I feel like it's generative. I might be tired at a day of writing, after a day of writing for 12 hours. I might be exhausted, but it's like a fulfilled sort of exhausted. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Rather than your nervous system just kind of tiring you out all day, like dopamine hit, nervous system, cortisol, dopamine, cortisol. It's like a boxing match. It's like a boxing match, right? No wonder we feel a little tired.
Yeah, no doubt. But I mean, writing does energize me. I mean, like if I get a good chunk, and sometimes it's hard to get to the desk or wherever it is I'm writing. Oftentimes it's on a train, but it does. Once I hit flow and I get into it, like when time starts to stop, that's like magic. And I do feel energized after that.
I do too. That's so funny. I use an hourglass to time my writing. Okay. So like something that it's like when I'm going to sit and say, I'm going to write for at least, I need long blocks. I need like 2 to 3 hours usually to get any juice out of the lemon. And then I can go for like 10 hours after that, but I like need the warm up, to get me there. So what I'll do is I'll take an hourglass and I'll just turn it. And then after the hour, I'll turn it. And then after the hour, turn it. And I want like a gentle reminder, like, yes, you're sitting here. Like if I'm about to get up, I'll be like, no, I'm not. The hourglass means I'm doing this right now. Do you know what I mean? So more than even a timer, it's a grounding reminder. We're writing right now. Okay. The other day, like I take my whole, any of you watching on video where I'm zooming from my front porch office. I've been working on my front porch since July and it was very hot. And then now I have a blanket and a space heater. But what was I just talking about? Because now I'm just
Yeah, we were going down the writing for an hour with the hourglass.
okay. I bring my desk. I bring my chair and my computer and all of my things in and out every night. Okay. And I knocked over my hourglass a couple days ago and it broke and glass started falling out. And I was like, oh, damn it. But I was like, already like, I had so many good hours with you and it's not my only one. But then I put it upright, Mike, and it stopped. One of the broken pieces of glass got into it. And now I have this little sculpture that I put on my bookshelf that just expresses exactly what you just said. Sometimes when you're writing, it feels like time stops, right?
Yeah.
It feels like you are in either, like we can look at this, it feels like you're in Neverland. It feels like you're in that creative part of your brain, that flow state. You can get into it in different ways, like car racers get into it, athletes get into it, dancers, mountain climber, rock climbers get into it. But getting into that flow state where you're really, I think, tapped into your purpose, tapped into your talents, tapped into your gifts. I think that's where we get our original thoughts. And that's where we get our thoughts that if you believe in a higher power, that's where I think they come from. When we're in that, when we are tapped into our gifts, okay? Because we're all here to do unique work. Like, this is going to air after the election because we're recording after the election. And I had a friend call me the next day to be like, Ash, like, how are you doing? Like, I just want like your input on things. And I was like, I feel fired up. I feel great. I'm like, there'd be way less purpose for my writing as a white woman in the world if Kamala would have got elected, okay? Because I look like a very basic white woman, but I have some ideas that are a little more on the fringe or really a little bit more on the edge, right? And because, come through my throat chakra, because I look like classic girl next door, I can push the envelope a little bit more than other people can because there's still like this pleasantness with my meat suit, like from my intro. So I take that's an honor and a privilege, and I'm going to take responsibility as a fighter in the resistance to take on the empire from the literary angle. Okay. So like, let's have fun with this. Let's have fun with like, what are our talents really? Right. Have you ever heard of the Strengths Finder book quiz or Now Discover Your Strengths, the book? Mike?
Oh yeah. I think I had to do it for my day job.
Okay. Did you like it?
I thought it was reasonably reliable. Yeah.
Okay. I loved it. And I think because specifically I grew up as a perfectionist and I grew up with what I realized after I'd been no contact with my family for a few years. Wow, the distance gave me some freedom to say like, wow, there was some really dysfunctional stuff going on. Okay. So I am who I am for lots of reasons. And one of the things being a perfectionist was I always focused on my weaknesses. Always, always, always. Like my strengths were like, of course you're good at that. Why wouldn't you? That's easy for you. Why wouldn't you be good at it? You know what I mean? Straight A student, all of these things. It was always like the carrot was dangled in the direction of where the people wanted me to dance and behave. And also to not feel too good about myself. There was that too, which I didn't realize, right? I was just like, these are the people guiding me and I'm not good at these things. So the Strengths Finder really, really helped me. And what that book says is like, Tiger Woods could have said like, golf, I'm naturally good at golf, but I should probably focus on piano to make myself more well-rounded. You know what I mean? We wouldn't do that. But so often when our gifts are not clear, masculine, valued traits, right? Like athleticism is an easy one, right? like you rang the bell with the alpha bros if you're an athlete. Do you know what I mean? Like it's a like you go back to gladiator times, like athletic man, yes, check. So, but when our talents don't fit that exactly, we can be like, morphed really easily by our conditioning and the people around us
Oh yeah.
to try to fit in, rather than to really try to land on what we're here to do and what we're really uniquely good at.
Well, yeah. I mean, just growing up, in the age where I grew up, the '80s. Right, I'm a child of the '80s. Just hit 50 this year, and I was not like your traditional. This is going to come to as a surprise to so many people. That sarcasm, like your traditional masculine type guy. Like I could have given a shit about sports. I really didn't care. Like I watched the Mets because my dad watched the Mets, and it's like we rallied around the '86 season because they were doing well. But like I don't spend my Sundays watching football for the game. I watch football because my neighbor Angelo always cooks good food.
It's a social thing. It's a social thing. It's not a like, this is the most important thing in the world to me thing. My ex-husband, Manny, I'm gonna jump in right here. He worshiped at the altar of our TV and he said to me, football is the most influential thing in America. And I was like, it is influential as sports go, yes. But he was like, yeah, he really saw it as the biggest priority of Americans, period, was football. And I was like, for some people it is, right? I know one. But to him, it was just like athletic bro man with the ball. The best one is the winner. You know what I mean? It was very focused, in his paradigm on like, that is the best way to be masculine or the best way to be human, right?
Yeah.
And for you, sports was something that was relational for you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I mean, it was relational. I was never good at team sports, although I was pretty decent at baseball. Like I had good hand-eye coordination, but like when it mattered, like in a game, I would always choke. And I just didn't enjoy that. I love running. So cross country became my jam like later on in like high school, and I still run now. But like where I got most of my energy was in theater, was in performing, was in being around like those. I don't want to use a judgmental term, but we were theater weirdos. We were like we were the weird kids.
Yeah.
And writing, and then like I found my voice as a writer later on in life, and I just really got a lot of energy out of storytelling and translating like whatever I was feeling inside to the page. I couldn't always verbalize it well, and that came to a I guess it led to a lot of tension in personal relationships because I could express myself better in a blog post that thousands of people will read than I can in a one-on-one conversation sometimes. But that was just the way it works for me.
Intimacy and vulnerability are two different things.
Yeah.
So, and you can have vulnerability with your thoughts and your awarenesses and what you want to share. But intimacy is a different kind of scary, because there's this having your ideas critiqued and having your own heart rejected are two different things.
That's right.
They're two different things. And I think as writers, I think as humans, we get the two confused a lot of times. We think one means the other or, vice versa. Because we are sensitive little creatures here, humans. You know what I mean? Like even the most vicious among us, you can tell are hurting. Like we're not built to withstand everything that we go through, like we're like little, like, can kind of feel like you're a pincushion sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think that for so many generations and in a patriarchal society, sharing that sensitivity and sharing your softness and admitting, hey, that hurt, ouch, was seen as weakness by everybody and for everybody, right? Boys weren't allowed to cry. Girls were called emotional when they did. Like that, you can cry, little girl, because you're lesser. Of course you'd cry. You know what I mean? You're irrational. There's degradation with it, right? Like anything that was not tough, masculine, like just taking the abuse and, like you said, being able to perform under pressure. Like, listen, I want the people who crack to tell that tells the rest of us, hey, we're stopping this conversation now. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not like, oh, conversations are won by the person who can be the toughest in chaos, right? We need the voices of the people who really was shut down in chaos, but who notice everything. Do you know what I mean? But in a patriarchal or family system where like the loudest voice gets heard, we don't have real interdependence. We don't have real interdependence, and we value kind of one thing only. And that's where I think, in relationships and in even in larger society, I think that's where we miss each other because we're not really relating. We're kind of just playing roles in a paradigm a lot of the time.
Yeah, we're playing roles in a script that we didn't necessarily write in settings that aren't necessarily authentic. But I do think like the most vicious among us are those who are hurting the most, because I think that's where the viciousness comes from. It comes from unresolved pain and trauma, and that's how it gets expressed. It gets expressed as meanness, or eventually it'll come out as illness in the body. But I loved what you said about like we live in the society where we're not necessarily encouraged to talk about those types of things. And I think there are also subgroups within society who are really told that they can't talk about that stuff. Men, I think, are one. It is not valued for us to be outwardly vulnerable. And then as you go into like different communities, I was in an Uber in Chicago a couple of years ago, and I'm driving with the driver, and I always have a little chit chat with the driver, and we're talking. He was an African American man, and I don't know how the topic of him losing his son came up, but he told me that he had recently lost his son, and I said, "Oh, that must have been very hard on you. I was sorry to hear that." He's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah," and he's like, "You're the first person I've ever admitted that to." And I said, "Oh, that's interesting." I didn't know why I was chosen at that moment for him to do it. And I said, "Oh, no, you didn't talk to a therapist? You didn't go to any grief counseling?" He's like, "No, not in our culture." He's like, "In my culture, we can't do that." And it just hit me. And I'm like, wow, that's, first of all, why is it me? Like, what did I do? Like, why was I brought into that Uber at that point in time? Like, why was I there for that person? Why did I need to hear that? But wow, it really just did
Okay.
open my eyes to,
Well, I know the whys, Mike.
yeah.
I know the whys because listen, you just said you didn't grow up really concerned with masculinity as like it wasn't something that was dangled in front of you like a ploy, like are you acting like a man, or are you being a fruit, right? Like my dad used to say fruit when I was growing up, right? Which seemed like, it's gentler than the F word, the F slur,
Right.
but it means the same thing, right? You didn't have that dangled in front of you like some people did. You didn't have the extra stress that this Black man has, right? Of what it means to be a Black man, and also the stereotype of, yeah, what it means to be an awful Black man, right? Like deadbeat dad, criminal, this, blah, 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 right? Like it's like, oh, I want to stay on the good side of what the stereotypes could be in my community. And that box is very small, right? It's very small. You know who it's the biggest for, Mike? You, as a white man, you've got the biggest box, and you're even compartmentalized, like you're even limited, right? It's not good. Like patriarchy is not good for anybody. Like it really tells everybody that anything feminine about you is bad. Anything that's feminine, if you're creative, if you're feeling, if you're sensitive, if you're connected to animals, if you kind of have a feeling about things, if you're like, it's gonna rain. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like all of these, there are in some cultures, there are like exceptions, right? Like if a man's a good cook in some cultures, that's okay. He has a talent, right? And it's not girly. Like, there are different caveats in different places, but most cultures have a like dong holders better than non-dong holders.
Yeah.
That binary, right? That keep that then we have to define, oh, well, what's masculine and what's feminine. And so often the great things about how people relate to each other are labeled as feminine when it's actually like human. It's human, everybody. Welcome to 2024.
Yeah. And you still see it in the corporate world too. It's like I look around the room. I work in for a large bank now, which is new news since the last time we chatted. And in my group, I work in the design team. And, it is like I probably 80-20, female to male in design. In finance, like if you look in the finance department or the technology department, that number is reversed. Um, and my daughter she just started working in finance, and she has a hard time with it. I mean, she's like with the finance bros all day long, and I'm like, Maggie, don't let that get you down. Like you show them what you got. But
It is, but to give her that acknowledgement that yes, you are living sort of in like a sausage party, Maggie. That's what patriarchy and corporate traditionally is. There's room for a few women, right? But it's like, it's a bros club in a lot of ways. But we yay her for pushing through, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I know we went on a long tangent there, and I thought that was an interesting tangent. I do want to come back and talk about your new memoir, which is Split. Before we talk about Split, though, I think we need to give the audience just a little bit like an elevator pitch on what Swing was about, because I think
Perfect.
You need to understand Swing a little bit before you get into Split.
Absolutely. Thank you for tipping it off that way, Mike, because you are right. Okay, so hi, everybody. I'm Ashleigh Renard, author of Swing, a memoir of doing it all. And it's the story of how, as a perfectionist mom, I took doing it all to the next level as the world's worst attempted swinger. So I was like, before it became a thing to like homeschool and homestead for Instagram, I was doing it just because like I wanted like a slow life with my kids. And I was also working full-time running my nonprofit. I had a synchronized skating organization that was one of the biggest in the world. Okay. Because I'd been a skater my whole life in Canada and then come to the US and started this organization just outside Philadelphia. Okay. So I just tripled the size of my business. I had 3 kids. Life is so busy. My then husband and I decide to go to swingers sex clubs, not because there's something wrong, quote unquote, wrong with our marriage, but because we are so overworked and tired. We're thinking, like, what could we actually do that was fun? And he and I didn't really have any shared hobbies besides having sex with each other, Mike, which I realize now could have
Not
like
a terrible hobby, I have to say.
well, and we were both athletes and we both had stamina and it was like great. It's not a bad hobby, but I would like at least one other, maybe. So, so the only thing we could think of was going to sex clubs. So the book Swing is like the complete idiot's guide for what not to do if you're going to dip your toe in the swing lifestyle. Okay, I just made every mistake in the book very quickly. And so the story plays out it's humorous. I fell in love with someone right away. Like I was catching feelings all over the place, Mike. I couldn't even get myself laid. Like I say, I'm like I really failed at swinging. Anyway, so it is then the story swings the story of pulling ourselves out of that lifestyle and taking a look like, oh my God, what lies have we been telling ourselves? Like, what have we just been sweeping under the rug? Because suddenly, as soon as I was getting a little attention from other men, I was like, yes, it is actually true. I am not happy in this relationship because the ability to emotionally connect and cognitively and talk about interesting things is in the toilet. But I just was like, I should feel happy because we don't fight. I should feel happy because we have healthy kids. That's what I should feel happy. I should feel happy. So swing is me like kind of taking off that like privileged white woman. So I should just be happy for my whole life, kind of like, mask and saying, all right, I'm grateful for so many things. And also there are some things in my life that I would like to be different. So swing is that. Right after Swing came out. So Swing, I got an agent right away, but then I didn't really love that. And I ended up self-publishing Swing. And it was a fantastic release, especially for an independently published book. It outsold 3 books on the New York Times bestsellers list in the first week. sold 5,000 copies in that first week, okay, which is huge numbers. That's more than 98% of books sell in their lifetime, okay?
Yeah.
Right? I took like my business sense that I had, I coached synchronized skating, which is like the only discipline of skating that people don't know exists, Mike. So I took my skills and like, how do I make people who don't even know something exists care about it to try to promote swing? And I did a good job. Just a few days after it came out, I had a conversation with my parents. I thought maybe that they were asking to FaceTime with me because I'd hit the Winnipeg Free Press bestsellers list back in Canada. Oh, because just for your listeners, I didn't make the New York Times bestseller list because it's not a straight up sales list. Straight up sales, I beat 3 books, but it's more of an most influential list. Okay. And it's curated, and I knew that, and all authors know that. So I know I would have to like sell probably 10,000. I would have to like beat the top one to like even make the list. Right. So I know that, and that's still on the radar for future books. Okay. But I did hit this bestseller list in my college city of Winnipeg, and I was so proud. And I thought my parents were calling to talk about that, but they weren't. They were calling to talk about a long-standing sibling issue. I'm the oldest of 4 kids, eldest daughter, right? And I had been really responsible for one of my siblings in a surrogate parent type role for a decade, for years and years and years. Okay. So the year before, about 9 months before Swing came out, I had gone no contact, estranged myself from that sibling, and then tried to still have a relationship with my parents and my 2 other siblings. It had some, 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. It was like, it was a family transitioning to new boundaries. But it was right after Swing came out on this call that I realized, oh man, this is not going to work out. And on that day, I decided, okay, I'm going no contact with my parents. And then in the next couple of weeks, I was like, and my brothers too. Okay, everybody. But I silently promised myself I could not leave my marriage, Mike, because I could not imagine being a girl who didn't talk to her parents and who was divorced. I thought, like, I will be a leper in the streets. Like, that is too much brokenness to explain away. And luckily, our marriage was in a newly rehabbed place. Like, the stories I told in Swing were true. Like, we were in a better place. But over the next couple years, Mike, as our boys became teenagers and I got to feel my position on the family totem pole shift into like, oh, there's the yappy broad over there. I'm so glad I have another bro. It was like so weird, kind of how misogyny that had been undercover before kind of showed itself as soon as I had a kid who was taller than me. So then I left my marriage, and I moved into this house, Mike, on the day that the Keeping It Hot podcast launched. I was like, oh my God, I just want to tell everybody to get divorced. What am I doing? Because I kind of gone all in on keeping it hot. So Split is the story of really how does a person look themselves in the face when every single way that they would have judged themselves or anybody else in this lifetime, like it's like everything comes up everything comes up L's, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, I failed at that. I failed at that. Like, I can't make any of these relationships work. Common denominator is me. I felt like the proverbial tree in the forest, Mike. Like, if there's no one around to love me, like, how do I know if I'm good or not? Like, how do I know if I even exist?
So how did you answer that question? And how did you deal with this fear that, you were going to be the leper in your community?
Well, I just became it. And I was like, oh, still alive today. And it was hard. And it was even like, I was kind of paranoid, Mike, like moving into a house alone. The neighbors across the street were like, they gave me a card and they were like, welcome to the neighborhood. Please text us your last name and your husband's name. And I was like, oh my God, I'm here alone. Like, single woman on the block. There goes the neighborhood. Like, I was like, it was this paranoia about like, I don't know. It was all of my own internalized misogyny coming up, Mike. And I took it step by step. And when I started dating, I was so nervous about neighbors seeing different cars in my driveway. And then I thought to myself, Ashleigh, pretend you are a 42-year-old successful male author who moved into this house. And you have different vehicles in your driveway. And that was the game I had to play with myself, Mike. I had to play all these little games to just be like, maybe I'm not, a family deserting hussy. Like, it was like all of the judgments that I could imagine from the world I was putting on myself, and like holding up a mirror and being like, am I that or am I not, Mike? Because I couldn't tell. I really, really was happy, but I was like, what if but choosing my own freedom and happiness felt like violence. It felt like I was like doing the most nefarious thing possible. So I kept asking myself, like, how bad am I really for making the choices that I've made?
Yeah. My brother went through a divorce. I have a twin brother, went through a divorce during the pandemic, and it was nasty. And he knew it was the right thing to do because I won't go into his backstory. It's his story to tell. But everybody on the family was like, we saw this coming. Probably should never have happened in the first place. We tried to tell you, you waited 17 years too long. But he would call me all the time. He'd be like, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? And he was even second guessing it after years of abuse,
Okay,
abuse to
the
him, abuse to the children.
the self-gaslighting is in extreme. And I was not in an abusive marriage. I was in a marriage with a man who has a very small scope on what he thinks he's responsible for and responsible to in this lifetime. It's just very, very narrow. And I live my heart bleeds for the whole world in every moment. And I have eccentric and professional ways of lining up with that part of me in a way that is nourishing. Okay. But brother, I didn't have an abusive marriage, but I had an incredibly dysfunctional family. On retrospect, that I brought a lot of that dysfunctional stuff into my marriage. Okay. And there's one thing that your listeners probably have heard about, but this is a good time to bring it up. When you've been in, like your twin brother was, in a relationship that doesn't make sense on a level of like kindness and reality and consideration, right? Like the consideration that you would think we would have for other people is not there, right? When it's not there, a lot of things that you try to do that would be nice are used against you in a way, like your own vulnerability and your own, like what would normally be goodness is used against you in a way that you can't really trust yourself in the same way. And your listeners probably know about the trauma responses: fight, flight, freeze. One of the really common ones that is especially common in children, especially common in women, especially common in people who don't want to fight, is fawning. Okay, and fawning is when you observe a stressor, or you observe a danger in your environment, or you observe somebody who is emotionally not stable, right? Because that's a danger. Because they could hurt your feelings, or they could hurt you physically. Like it's a danger. Your nervous system registers it as such. And for those of us who fawn, and I am a fawner, my name is Ashleigh and I'm a fawner, what we'll do is we will try to buddy up and be as little of a threat as possible to the person who's managing the dysfunction, running the dysfunction. We can even be best buds, accomplices even, it's called a flying monkey if you go out and you're like attacking people on behalf of the person with the narcissism or the dysfunction or whatever it is, right? But a fawner really, really buddies up with the person causing them the pain and feels so much responsible for them. There's so much responsibility. It's definitely codependency. It's one of the ways people are
codependency 101.
Right? But it's so hard for people to pull apart, because them being close to the person driving the dysfunction actually does make that person a little calmer usually, but at the expense They're just being used. Their life force is being manipulated by the person who needs someone else dancing so they can stand still. That's what I find most often with people who are dysfunctional and who drive dysfunction. If someone else is calm, they feel rattled. So they need to go and like move all the bobbleheads. So then when they see kind of the chaos in front of them, it's like something about it, and lots of different reasons, right? But there's something about it that then makes them feel more in their element, like more able to function the way that they want to. It's like causing anxiety to try to mitigate their own.
Yeah. Yeah, it is codependency 101. And the only way to break it is to go through that uncomfortable feeling of not giving into it, of not sort of taking that response of you call it fawning. For me, it's placating. It's trying to reduce tension or even avoid tension. And that's my nature, right? I don't like tension. I grew up with a father who could get really angry very quickly, and had you walking on eggshells. So like for me, like in having been in codependent relationships, that you have to say, you know what, I'm just not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to give into it. And being calm, I think, is the right thing. Just sort of, acknowledging someone is going through something, but not trying to solve it or give into it or try and fix it, because you'll never fix it.
Hands off. Hands off is what one energy person told me. Like, anytime you want to go in, you're sticking your head into a lion's mouth. Okay. Yeah. And it's a lion. It's a lion. Even though you want it to be nice, it's a lion. Actually, it can't help it. You're gonna lose your head, right? But I think that, because so often people who are bumped around the most by manipulative people, or who are, can most easily become codependent, really have a generous heart and really have like a long leash for credit that they're willing to give somebody, right? So it's like, oh, it's okay. And we make a lot of apologies for other people, and we try to help. You see them struggling. Like, the struggle is so apparent, right? That's usually why we're there. I call it my codependent dance of trying to motivate people towards kindness. I like to make them feel really appreciated, Mike, so appreciated. And oh my God, it's giving me a bellyache right now, remembering that role that I can fall into. But I just, we all got some positive reinforcement on it at some parts. And so what I just try to do is it's something that was not a natural part of my personality. And it was something that, even though I was a teenager in the 90s, it got trained out of me, even from culturally, is I try to act aloof sometimes now. I actually when there's behavior that's a little wacky, even with my kids are 17, 15, and 11. And when my 17-year-old is like, I'm like, I kind of just dodge it. You know what I mean? Instead of I need to correct that, or I need to say something interesting if you want my attention. You know what I mean? It's sort of this we train people on how to treat us, right? By what we give our attention to, and what makes us dance, and what makes us go, sorry, I'm not tuned into your station anymore. I'm not dancing. When you put on the music, that's all it takes though, Mike, is just a shift in how you are enabling that person to push your buttons or kind of control the dynamic in the same way. As soon as one person shifts into a different role, the system has to change. Yeah. You remove one chicken from the flock, and the whole pecking order reorganizes.
Well, but oftentimes when that one person changes, it can lead to one of two outcomes, right? The other person can choose to change their behavior, or the other person can continue to do what they're normally doing, and then the system is completely broken. It doesn't work anymore. And that's one of my favorite phrases that I use is that I'll say to somebody that just doesn't work on me anymore. You know, when I know that something's about where there's a manipulative comment or action made,
I
it's just
love
that
those
just
words.
I'll say that doesn't work on me anymore. And then like usually whatever is happening will stop, but you know, that could end in neither person getting anything that they want either.
But it is a signal. It is a signal that like that bait is not taken here. It's not. You know, take that somewhere else. Somebody else will take that bait, but I'm not. If you want to keep relating, because usually the person will give you a dig because then they want something from you. They want you to come back with remorse or something. They want to get you into a position of like trying to appease them again. And it's like, nope. When you stand your ground, or what I learned in dating has been so great for me to exercise healthy relationships and healthy communication. It's been incredible because I've been like green flag, green flag, green flag, and then I don't keep going if there aren't any green flags. So like, you know, working through things. But one of the things has been like learning to push back when someone's like, I want to give people the benefit of the doubt. And even if they're being a little bit of a dick, I'm like, they were really a dick, but I'm going to focus on the point they just made before that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't take that. People can give me cheap shots and I will actually just like continue the conversation. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But then in dating, this one guy who is a minor league version of my mom, like a minor league version of my mom. Okay. No wonder I was attracted to him so quickly. And then after we broke up, I was like, but maybe if we get back together and it's better this time. It was like my first kind of trauma bond experience. But when I learned to push back with him, you know, and pushing back is always something I do in my writing, but I haven't always been able to do it in my personal life. So I think, you know, getting stronger and healthier with our boundaries and less apologetic is my name of the game. Like, you know, I may even miss a few apologies that I owe people. Like, I would rather be on that side right now than
Doesn't it come with being Canadian though, just having to apologize all the time? Isn't that like a national trait?
I actually made this one Instagram post once and our Facebook profile, and I posted and I said, signed the only Canadian who is not sorry.
You know, just talking about your writing again, is it fair to say that Swing was a liberating story, but that Split was about liberation?
Oh my God, Mike. Yeah. Can we quote you on that? Yeah, I think so. Oh my God. Okay. Wow. This is why I like talking to smart people, Michael Carlin. Yes. Swing was a liberating story to tell because I just told being a swinger is really rare. It's like 3 to 5%. And it's like one of the really taboo things that people don't really talk about. And like, we haven't even had very much media around it. We had like Eyes Wide Shut, and that was like a million years ago. And it was kind of creepy. You know, we don't have that much media around it. So I wanted to just demystify. And because I'd lived through it and enjoyed many parts of it and messed up at many more parts of it. But now, you know what feels so wretched that I should never talk about it? This estrangement from my family. I feel like this makes me vile. And did you know what? Like 30% of people are estranged from one or more family members. But I just grew up with this idea that with this real belief that only terrible people don't talk to their family. And only terrible families would have someone estranged from them. So Split is really a love letter and a fuck you to my entire family, to everybody I've ever loved, because it's an examination of, you know, when we abandon ourselves and to maintain relationships. And is that even doing any favors to anybody who we're relating to? Mike, if we're not there in full honesty and if we're not there in our full versions of ourselves.
Yeah. I am curious about your decision of how to publish Split, because you're doing it in a very unique way. And, this is for all the authors and writers listening. Can you just share a little bit about how you chose to publish Split?
Yeah. Okay, so Split, A Memoir in Pieces is coming out in 8 different parts that all come out as ebook only release. And they're coming out 1 week apart. And they are literally like 1/8 of the book. Each part is about 10,000 words, which for writers, here's a funny little nugget for you. There's an Amazon category called 1 hour memoir reads, like 60-minute memoir reads. So these books have been hitting number one, not just in bestseller, in new releases, sorry, but number one bestsellers in their categories, which is just for authors a great, fun thing from a marketing standpoint, right? You get the great images with the, bestseller in its category, these little books. So for me, I think part of the liberation of telling this story is allowing myself to leak it out in bite-sized pieces, because sometimes I don't know how I'm going to feel about a story being out into the world until it's out into the world. So part of this is my own courage, like my own lack of courage. So I'm like, oh, let me just go a little bit. I'm wading in. Do you know what I mean? The water's cold. And like an idiot, I'm not just jumping in, Mike. I don't jump into cold water. I wade in. Okay. That's just how I do it. So I'm wading in. And also, I want to give my readers who are like the Ashleigh story super fans the opportunity to read this book early, read it as it comes out, and also see how it evolves. Because I had a small but very dedicated audience when Swing came out. When I was getting ready to publish Swing, like when I was looking for a literary agent and all of these things, I had like maybe 1,500 followers on Instagram, but they were dedicated. And I sent out 425 emails to people in my audience who asked to read Swing early. And I sent it to them a year and a half before Swing came out, because I wanted their feedback on the book. And I wanted to know, is my story, I think this is a good story. And people were resonating with it and sending messages back to me and then asking me questions. And from that, I tweaked the story that then finally became the published book. So for me, I like a co-creative process. Like I chose the only discipline of skating that doesn't go to the Olympics because I could skate with a team, 12 to 24 of my friends. And, you do stand up. I do write books. And also most of my storytelling is on Instagram stories. Most of my storytelling is in person. Most of my storytelling is in a podcast interview like this or on a Zoom call with a client I'm coaching. Most of my storytelling is verbal and it's one-to-one. Okay. So and it's from those conversations with people that then I understand, wow, this is what resonates with people. Like when you do stand-up, Mike, in real time if a joke lands by what people's eyes look like, right?
That's right.
Just their eyes tell you everything. I used to tell my skaters when they were listening to me, when I was choreographing something, they'd be like, I'm listening. I was like, your eyes tell me different. I only need to look at your eyes and then I know if you're getting, if you're picking up what I'm putting down. So part of this is like testing the audience to be like, what stories do they like, right? And people are already writing back to me with what's resonating the most. So with those ones, I'm making a note like, okay, that scene doesn't come out on final edit. So yeah, I'm workshopping it. I'm also seeing if there is an opportunity for increased revenue offering things early and digital. And then who of my audience are going to be like, nope, I have waited 3.5 years since Swing came out. I cannot wait to get that hardcover and I'm going to sit and I'm going to read this whole book, because a lot of people have said to me, I am so excited and it's so hard, but I'm not reading it until the whole thing comes out. Yeah. And some people have said, I want the audiobook, and the audiobook is only going to be released at the end. So we're going to see, Mike.
Well, you know what I love about your whole story is it's really about challenging conventions, because with Swing, you're challenging the conventions of, what marriage has to look like or be like, family life as well, in terms of, with your family of origin. But you're challenging the conventions of publishing with Split the way you're doing it, telling it in 8 parts. And I think it's brilliant, number one, not just for the marketing aspect of it, which is, hitting bestseller in a couple of different categories. But if you think about it, most people are not going to spend $24 on a memoir, especially $24 on a digital memoir, right? But by taking it in 8 parts, selling it for $2.99, which I think is the price point.
$4.99 actually.
$4.99. Okay, so
and it was $9.99. And my editor Jamie, or my friend Jamie, said that's crazy, Ashleigh. And I was like, I don't want them to read it unless they're Snoopy.
Yeah.
The Snoopiest people can pay for it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Now it's down to $4.99. Yeah. I don't know.
To me, it's brilliant. Like challenging the conventions, challenging the conventions of publishing is brilliant to me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I like to challenge all the conventions. I need a shirt that says does not play well with authority figures. Because I just never have. I just never have. Like, I'm the boss, applesauce, and so are you. And like, let's not pretend that that's not the way that it is, because that's the way that it can be for all of us. And it's also terrifying. It's also terrifying having to be responsible for everything. It's all things at once.
Just speaking of shirt, I have to know, what is the piece of music on your shirt? I mean, is that, what is it? Do we know?
We have no idea. This is a t-shirt from Anthropology, and I get so many compliments on this t-shirt. For the listeners, it is a white t-shirt with black music notes on it, but isn't it a nifty little shirt?
It's nifty. It's certainly a conversation starter, but I wish I knew how to read music, because I would like tap it out just to see. But we
should get someone to play it. We should we could crowdsource that easily, like in my stories even, you know what I mean? Because that's the thing. That's one of the things I love about social media. Okay, because let's round this out, right? Because we were talking near the beginning about like, things that weren't like, traditionally masculine, weren't the coolest things. But social media has shown us like these artsy motherfuckers who have just been living amongst us, right? Like the creativity, the comedy, the beauty, the like painting denim jackets, the creating this, the creating that. Have you seen the dice art? Have you seen the guy who paints, who like draws things in the dark with light and then uses like a very, like, I don't know, whatever the exposure is on the camera. So like all of the light that he draws, it like looks like there are like neon light figures in the darkness. Like, it's just, humans are so creative. And if we could stay there instead of destructive, I mean, I think it would be good for all of us.
That's the process of socialization. I mean, just look at your own kids. Like when mine were young, they loved to just put on shows for us. Like after dinner, family party, 3, 4, we're going to put on a play for you all. And they just do it and they have fun and they dress up and all that stuff. Whenever they hit grammar school, that shit stops. And that's because of the way we socialize our kids. I mean, it's sad in many ways.
It really is. So if we can, if we can help them land on their unique talents, I think, so I coach synchronized skating where all the athletes have to look exactly the same. And the thing that I figured out in my last few years, because I coached it for 23 years, was I could get our athletes to match each other the most precisely when we spent the most of our time focusing on how different we were. So they knew physically, psychologically, like she thinks like this, so I better, you know what I mean? Anticipating, helping, knowing she thinks like this, so I need to do that. Do you know what I mean? Like knowing how we're different. That's what interdependence is. Yeah. Nobody's better than the other. You know what I mean? It's more horizontal loyalty. Like in my family, like some kids are really good. Like, there's a kid who keeps us organized. There's a kid who does this, the kid who does that. It's not just because like, we're older that we're better at things. Thank goodness. I tell my kids, we have a family. So thank goodness we don't need to be good at everything, because there'll be other people around who hopefully are good at the things that we're not good at.
That's right. Well, I always like to end my conversations with a couple pop culture questions. And I know we've been through my standard ones before, so I have some new ones for us today. And since you are Canadian, these are rooted in Canadianism. So here's one. Who is the better Canadian heartthrob, Ryan Gosling or Ryan Reynolds, or none of the above?
Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah. Gotta be Ryan Reynolds. I mean, no shame to Ryan Gosling, but it's gotta be Ryan
kidding? Reynolds. Is this a real question? Yes. Thank you for asking. Yes. But that is the truth, Michael.
He's so funny. I mean, he and Blake live literally probably 5 miles away from where I live. And they're in Pound Ridge. I shouldn't say it. I'll have to edit that out maybe, but well, people can Google where they live. But we always miss them at this one restaurant because we'll read in the paper, oh, Ryan and Blake were seen at blah blah blah, and I'm like, we were there the night before. So that's I said Ryan Reynolds. There's the answer. Okay, how about a favorite Canadian musician or band, but you can't say Nickelback?
I love Tragically Hip.
Okay.
And I love Alanis Morissette. Yeah, pretty basic, but yeah, those are two of my.
Wait, was she also on You Can't Do That on Television?
I think so, but I'm a little young. I was born 1980, so okay. I missed that. I didn't know who Alanis was until I was 14, almost 15, and Jagged Little Pill came out.
Oh, such a good album. That was such a good album.
I've seen her in concert more than any other artist in the world.
Really?
Alanis, yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah, no, she's great. I would have said Rush. That's my favorite Canadian band, I have to say.
What's your favorite song by Rush?
There's too many to tell, but I love Time Stand Still.
Okay. So that's what I should listen to? Uh-huh.
That's on my half marathon playlist. It's like probably 1/4 in, right as I'm starting to pick things up a little bit.
Okay, Time Stand Still by Rush. Yeah. Got to check it out.
Do you have a favorite Rush song, or do you not even care about progressive rock?
I can't even name one Rush song.
All right. So I could have said anything.
I probably
have said.
Well, no, I just want to know where to start. That's why I asked you. Because I'm like, Rush, they sound British, man. I don't know. I don't know.
Proudly Canadian. Proudly Canadian.
Yeah, well, I need to educate myself, clearly. No, I don't know Rush.
I will say, you go to Rush, right? Looks like a lot of finance bros in the audience. They don't really have a strong female following. I will say that.
Well, I'll let you know in the lyrics if I notice why.
No, Geddy Lee, the bass player, very, very progressive dude. But anyway, it's check him out. I would start with, what would I start with? Maybe Moving Pictures. Start with that album.
Okay.
All right, last one. Favorite Canadian comedy legends, because I'm a comedy guy. Who can you think of a favorite Canadian comedian? I'll throw out a couple: Catherine O'Hara, Eugene Levy, Mike Myers.
I really want to interview Mike Myers.
Me too.
I really want to interview Mike Myers because here's the thing. My family really loved stupid ass comedies when I was in high school. Like that's something that we could just bond over, right? Like my dad, I remember like if Caddyshack was on and he would be like, watch this, Ashleigh. Do you know what I mean? He's like, this is so funny, like slapstick humor. Do you know what I mean? So Austin Powers was a family love when I was in high school, and I had a little brother and sister, and my dad really loved it. And I love the brilliance in the characters that Mike Myers played in those movies. Like, you know what I mean? Just all of the different characters he plays, and how did you come up with this? And how did you come up with this? And the exhibit, just so many iconic. And like, I mean, I always do this, 1 million, like, cause right. He's Dr. Evil. He's Austin Powers. He's everybody in that movie. He's Fat Bastard. Do people know this? He's just very talented. And I think that humor is the highest form of enlightenment. I think if you can find out how to make something funny, you're on another level. Okay. And the Levies have shown that. Catherine O'Hara, she is just people say Meryl Streep is great, but Catherine O'Hara is just a clutch fucking character actress. Like she is those characters,
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think Mike Myers is like the one who I would say is like from a creative standpoint, he's the icon I would like to.
I mean, I love the Austin Powers movies. My favorite of his, though, is one of his first, So I Married an Axe Murderer. It is so frigging offbeat and funny. But he plays his Scottish father in that, and I'll just never forget that. That movie led to, he did a thing on Netflix a couple months ago, last year, called The Pentaveret. But anyway, I know there's something you want to say about that.
No. I think I remember the dad.
Oh,
and was it him playing the dad that then led to the Austin Powers characters?
It could have been, yeah.
Or what were you going to say?
Well, no, there was a show he did called The Pentaverate. So there was this monologue he gives as the Scottish father in So I Married an Axe Murderer.
And is he sitting in a chair when he does it?
Well, he's sitting in the chair when he says, "Head pants, no!" and the kid throws his pants down the stairs. But I think he was outside at a wedding and he starts talking about Colonel Sanders and his beady little eyes and how there's a Pentaverate of people who run the world. Like 5 people who run the world. Colonel Sanders is one of them. I don't know. It's bizarre. It's funny though.
So then he did the show called that? Is that what you're saying? Oh my God.
It was like, all I'll say is and he plays all the characters in that. Look it up. It's on Netflix.
I need to watch it because funny, I love
episode 2. There's a scene in a pool hall and I'll leave it at that.
Okay. So I have some Mike Myers that I'm really missing out on is what you're telling me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I need to go back to So I Married an Axe Murderer and watch that again. Cause I never watched movies more than once, Mike.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've had like some, exposure, but then I don't have the study. But Austin Powers is one that I love. Like every time I'm just like, it's one I brought back for my kids. We gotta, my kids are coming back tonight. So I Married an Axe Murderer is on our list. It is high.
Put it on there.
Thank you for that. So thank you, because I forget about my huge creative appreciation for Mike Myers often.
Yeah, he's a national treasure. And I realize we've really covered a lot of ground here. We started off talking about chakras, right? We wound up going into traditional views of masculinity. We talked about the patriarchy was mentioned on more than one occasion. We talked about swinging. We talked about liberation. And then, of course, we talked about Mike Myers. So, I mean, kudos to us.
Kudos. So fun. Mike, every time we get to talk, it's such a blast.
It's a blast. Well, why don't you tell everybody, Ashleigh, where people can follow you on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, all those fun social media places, and also where they can buy Split and Memoir in pieces.
Yes. Okay. So I am Ashleigh, spelled the smug way, AshleighRenard. You can find me on Instagram. I'm hanging out there in my stories almost every day. I love DMing with my audience members. That's one of my favorite things, hearing how the stories I'm telling are landing with people, right? Because that's why I like to tell stories, to make people feel entertained and like they're not alone. Like, you can get my books on Amazon, or where actually everything is on Amazon right now, because the early reads of Split are only there. And then the hardcover will be available everywhere that books are sold. And we're going to have the pre-order up pretty soon. But yeah, come find me over on Instagram and say hi. That's the place I usually hang out.
Very good. I'll make sure to put all of your contact info in our show notes so people can easily find you, Ashleigh. And Ashleigh, I will say thank you for stopping by Uncorking a Story again and in letting me uncork yours.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks for listening to Uncorking a Story. If you'd like more information about today's guest or to find out more about Mike, go to uncorkingastory.com. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review us at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Tune in every week to hear Mike Carlin uncork a new story.